hello there. Welcome to Cade's Kaleidoscope podcast. This is your resource for holistic health, sobriety, and travel. I'm here talking with Liz about CRISPR today. And the first question is, what should the average person know about CRISPR?
So CRISPR is a gene editing technology, which means that using different chemicals in the lab, we are able to turn off and turn on different genes in the genomes of all different sorts of organisms. Now, CRISPR is not the first gene editing technology that has come to be. There have been many others that have been around for some time. One of those is called TALENs. These other gene editing technologies were, well, some of them were less precise than CRISPR. However, all of them were much more expensive than CRISPR. So CRISPR's real magic lies in its accessibility to many different types of labs that couldn't have afforded to do gene editing otherwise. CRISPR is typically used in labs to just understand how different genes work in organisms. So how does a specific gene function in wound healing, in neuron formation, in growth and development? These are all things that can be found out by either disabling a gene or turning a gene on in an organism where it normally wouldn't be. And through this, we're able to not only understand how different organisms work, but it can also help us understand our evolutionary history and where we came from.
Perfect, thank you for that. And the second question is, how does this affect us in everyday life?
So one of the biggest ways that people are experiencing and will experience gene editing in the future is through the foods that they eat. So many crops in their natural forms are inedible. So the way you would find them in nature, they wouldn't be able to sustain our enormous human population. So over many, many centuries, these crops have been naturally selected for to make them delicious and plump and juicy. So think of an apple or a tomato. Those would never exist like that in nature. And what CRISPR and other gene editing technologies do is they're able to really put that on the fast track. And while the foods we have now are pretty delicious at this point, we don't really have to do a whole lot with that. They are extremely inefficient, which means they need lots and lots of water the majority of the time. Typically, they need lots of fertilizers, which of course are harmful for the environment due to the runoff of these nutrients into waterways and other areas. And they're also extremely vulnerable to infections from microorganisms, fungi, and being just devoured by insects. And so CRISPR can actually go in and make plants use water more efficiently. They can make them need less fertilizer. They can make them resistant to infection by finding out the pathways that these infections are using, and they can make it so that insects don't want to eat them anymore. So that's one huge way that CRISPR can really benefit the environment and people. And then another way is, of course, human health. So
pause there. Now, when you say gene editing to make the environment better or to improve the efficiency of plants, this is also GMOs, right? These are genetically modified organisms. How do you address the common, I'm a hippie and I'm hesitant to eat anything. I mean, I eat tons of it because it's everywhere, but how do you address that question from someone who would be hesitant to consume, to put something in their body that's genetically modified?
So something that's genetically modified, they're not dangerous in the way that many people think of. They see like, okay, this DNA has been altered. Oh my God, it's some crazy Frankenfood. But really, with the exception of certain plants that really are all clones of one another, such as bananas, there's natural DNA variation amongst all organisms of a species. So the amount of DNA that's being changed in these GMOs is minuscule. And every time you eat a meal, you're getting a different mixture of DNA. There's DNA in everything you eat. So if you eat rice and beans, you're getting a mixture of the DNA from both of those foods. Whereas if you're just eating beans that have been genetically modified, the DNA has been tweaked slightly. What's a lot more deleterious to people's health is eating foods that either have infections. I forgot the name of an infection, a fungal infection on rye. Completely slipping my mind, but back in the day, it would just cause people to go insane and die horrible deaths from this fungal infection. And now, with CRISPR, we can completely eliminate the susceptibility of plants to that.
Could I chime in here?
Yeah.
Right. So
fertilizers are bad.
Fertilizers are bad. Yeah. It's an interesting. It sounds like something very. What's the word for some polar opposite? You know, something genetically modified that is actually better for the planet or for your body. Because I remember I met somebody in Ecuador, in Quito, the capital of Ecuador, and she had me help her on her English on a part of her college, which was an essay explaining that genetically modified fruit can actually be better for the environment because they require less water to grow. There you go. I mean, every piece of information you hear has its own spin, and just because it's genetically modified maybe doesn't mean that that it's going to affect the environment in a negative way. Okay, so we're going to continue exploring the second question, which was, how does this affect us in everyday life? And I specifically wanted to know about human life. How does this affect me? How could this affect those people around you, yourself?
So, looking at the future, the applications are essentially limitless. With our expanding knowledge of the human genome and how it all works, all of that goes into making us be able to use CRISPR and future gene editing technologies more efficiently. Right now, CRISPR has a lot of possibilities to help people with genetic mutations that they are born with that are in one spot on one gene that are extremely detrimental to your health. So think about hemophilia. That's one tiny mutation.
What is hemophilia?
So hemophilia is a disease where you cannot stop bleeding. Basically, there is a problem with the clotting factor in your blood. Another blood disorder where this is very applicable is sickle cell disease, which of course is a one tiny mutation that causes your red blood cells to not work as well and not be able to carry oxygen very well, and also to get stuck in your capillaries, causing extreme pain. And theoretically, and using CRISPR technology, we could theoretically stop this before it even happens by correcting the problem in an unfertilized egg. And we could also use it in adult or growing individuals by figuring out exactly how the gene functions, which we know, and being able to produce the enzyme that is lacking in order to make regular red blood cells. And right now, the treatment of choice is just infusing with healthy red blood cells. However, that's not fixing the problem at all. So all sorts of diseases could be greatly helped. And one day, diseases and problems that are caused by many dozens or hundreds of different genes could possibly be helped. We could figure out which genes were the big players, so to speak. So really limitless in terms of good, and also limitless in terms of if people want to spend money on it, they can get whatever they want.
That's great, and that leads into my next question. What are some more? Do you have any more examples of potential benefits to myself, my dog, my cat, the people around me?
Oh gosh, so I actually don't even know enough about genetic disorders to really even postulate, but just any genetic defect that you might have, if we can figure out, so in many cases CRISPR, until we figure out how to actually perform it in an organism with many cells, and then have it somehow work, then it's going to be hard for CRISPR to have a direct effect on, say, my health as an adult now, because there are like, billions of cells in my body. And CRISPR works best when you have one cell and you induce the mutation in one cell, and then that cell replicates and becomes a full-grown organism, and all those cells are fixed. So, but I have no doubt that they're going to figure it out.
Great. And the last question, at least for now, is what are some potential risks to us, to myself, to the people around?
So there are some risks just because CRISPR is not perfect. So there are what are called off-target effects with many types of CRISPR treatments, and that means that you knock out the gene that you want to knock out, or you turn on the gene you want to turn on. However, you also do other things in the genome, and a lot of times you have no idea what you did until it's a fully grown organism and you can see exactly what those random changes were. In my lab, we use a very small jellyfish, so if it is completely messed up from what we did, it doesn't really matter. But if when you're working with a human, it does matter. I forgot what it was for, but they were treating some sort of cancer with CRISPR gene editing treatments, and some of the people ended up developing cancer, and died just because possibly some off-target effects that occurred. So that's one risk. And then the other risk, of course, is increasing inequality. If CRISPR is used to help everyone equally in terms of maybe screening of infants and maybe even of embryos, that could potentially be good. But if it's used to create designer babies, or it's only used for the ultra-rich, then that's useless and is only going to create more strife in our world.
Right, and that reminds me, we're living in a pandemic right now. We're still recovering, or we're still in the COVID-19 pandemic. This is August 2021 that we're recording this, and we're currently in a bus. You can probably hear the motor to this bus. We're on our way to Woods Hole, Massachusetts. But that's all to say, the pandemic we're living in has been a good example for the whole world to observe the inequality between the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, between the haves and the have-nots. I was living in Argentina for the entirety of this pandemic up until August 2021, and I saw it with my own eyes. Peru is even worse than Argentina. Argentina was able to start getting vaccines just a month after the United States. But we had the Chinese and the Russian. I think it was very hard in Argentina to obtain a Pfizer. That's all to say that we are seeing this with our own eyes, that science is proportionally benefiting those who can pay for it, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Right on. Well, is there anything else on the subject of CRISPR that you would like to share with the audience of Cade's Kaleidoscope?
Yes, so I actually forgot to talk about insects. So another application of CRISPR is ridding the world of, well, not the entire world, but helping to control insect populations. So, for instance, mosquitoes that carry malaria and things like that, they can very quickly become resistant to insecticides, and as we have observed in our own lifetimes. DDT, which was once thought to be just a saving grace, they're all resistant to it now, and the same thing goes for any other insecticides you use. CRISPR can actually be used in very unique ways you can actually push certain mutations through a population, and I don't understand at all how it works, but basically you can end up making all of the males in a population sterile by pushing genes through. Yeah.
Can this be carried out in the United States population?
Hilarious. Sadly, mosquitoes are the big culprit right now. It would be a lot more complicated to do in us, and these mosquitoes, they live and die so quickly. Then we're able to push things through their populations very, very, very fast. So they're very rapid life cycles. Versus us, it would, even if we could figure out how to do it, it would take absolutely forever, and there would be a huge uproar, and before anything happened. It's not going to happen, so don't worry. But basically, yes, so if you're able to push these mutations through a population, have all sterile males, then that population can collapse. And it's really difficult, if not impossible, to develop a defense against, say, a CRISPR intervention.
Wow. Terrific. Thank you so much for your time, Liz. And anything else before we call it a day for this podcast?
Oh, that's it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot. So thank you very much for listening. If you'd like to support us, the links to do that will be included in in the notes of this podcast. You can Venmo me. You can send money through PayPal, through Cash App. Also, if you'd like to pre-order my first book, you are welcome to do that. The information to pre-order that first book is also included in the show notes of this page. And please do take a moment, if you can, to like, comment, and subscribe. Help make this podcast successful. And please leave a review. You can leave a review wherever you hear this podcast.